why we are here this morning and see if she comes on in the next minute. And if not, I'll do something. But today we're focusing on leadership and particularly, oh, there's Subi. Particularly leadership with volunteers. So we'll be talking about leadership today. And this is when I was talking to everyone in the original needs assessment, several people talked about this and needing more leaders to step up. And how do you do that with volunteers who are really busy in other things? And so, and also the fact that some volunteers don't always identify with URI. So today that's what we're going to focus on. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Subi to open us up. And we'll put the candle on the screen.
Apologetic for being really late. So my computer crashed. And yeah. So
we can light your candle if you have one. And Subi will open us. Thank you, Subi.
Thank you so much, Linda. So first, I really want to share that as I read the piece that you had shared with us, I cried because so many of the things were something that I've been facing for a very long time now, and so it meant a lot. And I think the words with which I want to open today probably might just help us start afresh and on a little more positive note and encourage us to make the difference that we already are. So I don't think I'll be able to share it because I'm using my phone, but I'll just read it for everybody now. I noticed something about people who make a difference in this world. They hold an unshakable conviction that individuals are extremely important, that every life matters. They get excited over one smile. They are willing to feed one stomach, educate one mind, and treat one wound. They aren't determined to change the world all at once. They're satisfied with small changes. Over time, though, the small changes that they make add up. Sometimes they even transform cities and nations, and yes, the world.
That is so beautiful. If you will send that to me, Subi, we'll share it out to the whole group, the written words. Thank you so much. It's quite beautiful.
So it's been shared by somebody from the Ripple Academy we had, and she's a grassroots worker, young woman who's also been facing a lot, and I think that's a wish that she wanted to share with everybody. That's what I did.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I want to thank Matt today for going over the outline with me and making me aware of some organizational practices. So I deeply appreciate your help. And are there any questions before we get started? Frederica, are you? No, you're not raising your hand. You're good. Okay. So as we open, we'll go around. There's a smaller group today, but your name and where you're from and your greatest strength as a leader is. So who would like to start? Alice?
Sure. Thanks, Linda. My name's Alice. I'm from San Francisco, where the sun is rising. And my greatest strength as a leader is that I am able to listen to understand what people are saying from their own experience.
Wonderful. Karima.
My name is Karima. I'm from Bonn, Germany. And my greatest strength as a leader is unshakable commitment, perseverance.
Wonderful. Biswardel?
Hello, namaste. My name is Vishwadev. I'm from the eastern part of India, Kolkata, and my greatest strength, I can't say only one, but it's passion for the work and also creativity.
Wonderful. Sorry.
My name's Sari. I live in Virginia in the US. And one of my greatest strengths as a leader is adaptability. So being able to adapt in different situations and also to...
Susie, can you mute?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just Subi switching. Yeah, so adaptability to different situations, but also adaptability to working with different types of people from different backgrounds and cultures.
Wonderful. In a way.
Hi, I'm Enoe. I'm from Caracas, Venezuela. And my greatest strength as a leader is the loving and respectful approach to other beings.
Great. Matt?
My name is Matt. I am local to Cardiff in Wales. And my greatest strength as a leader, I think, is I connect dots. I join up kind of pieces of potential and actual things in my mind to identify where things can go.
Mm-hmm. Great. Monica? Oh, you're muted, honey. You're still muted.
Is somebody able to unmute her?
There you go.
I got it. My name is Monica. I live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I'm from California. And my greatest strength as a leader is much like Matt's. It's the connectivity and it's caring about people and trying to connect people to people, issue to issue, place people from various places to other people. And knowing the background to be able to connect past to present.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the order of y'all changed on my screen, so I'm not sure who I called on so far. Have I called on you, Subi? I don't think so.
No, you haven't. So my name is Subhi and I'm from New Delhi. And my greatest strength as a leader is to be a sounding board to people. And I can maneuver around to actually help them talk what they're feeling from inside.
Great. Wonderful. Frederica.
I think one of my strengths is as motivator, to motivate others.
That's wonderful. Yeah, great. And Tony and I are here in rainy, cold North Carolina today. And so our next thing, as always, we'll review our agreements. And I wonder if someone would be willing to read the first piece. A volunteer? Okay, Monica. Oh, unmute. Yeah.
If I brought my best self to our meetings, you would see a thoughtful, prepared, energetic, awake, focused, team-spirited, and interested individual. Brings a commitment to timeliness, openness, deep listening, love, togetherness, music, celebration, wisdom, a willingness to learn, and patience with each other in our work together.
Wonderful. And someone read the next piece. Karima?
To step into my full power and speak my full truth, I need the group to be open-minded, honest, respectful, present, consistent, sincere, reflective, understanding, collaborative, inspirational, to listen with compassion, to engage in critical reflection, with a willingness to learn and share our diverse knowledge.
Wonderful. Any changes or things that people would like to add to that? So, and I review these every time because when you have a group that's working together, especially when any conflict rises and especially in person, if you always review these and then hold people accountable, that's what we talked about in our last training. So that's why we review them and ask for agreement. So thank you for that. So we'll move on to what makes a leader. I wanted to ask people to vote on a spectrum, and you can just put in chat what your number would be, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, to whether people are born as leaders or anyone can learn to be a leader. How would you answer that? Where would you go on this spectrum? And just type that in chat.
I don't know where chat is.
Oh, at the bottom of your screen, if you put your little arrow on that, chat will pop up and you touch it with your mouse and it should bring it up. Yeah. So I see a 3.5, 4, 4, 4. What is 1 and what is 5? So 1 is you're born a leader or not, and 5 is anyone can learn to be a good leader.
Frederica, I don't know if Linda's sharing a slide that had that on it. I wonder if on your phone you can't see it, which if that's the case, that might be helpful for Linda to know you can't see slides.
Thanks, Sari. I'll be able to get off my phone soon, so I'll navigate around, but thanks for that.
Oh, and thanks for letting me know. Okay. So we have folks who go from, we sort of think people are born a leader to anyone can be a leader. And so we're going to be talking about that today, and maybe we'll come back and see how people feel at the end. So thanks for that. That gives me information. Any thoughts about that? Do people want to say why they put, who put 2? Sarah, who put 2? Subi, you want to talk about why you put 2?
Because I think some people distinctly have a way around managing things, and as much as that can be cultivated and it can be improved over a period of time, there needs to be an initial spark which can be, that can be enriched. Okay. So that's why I think that either people are born or people aren't a leader.
Sure. And Subi, Biswadeb, you put 5. You want to say why you put 5?
I think when you talk about leader, It's really what we nurture inside of us. Everybody born with a special gift. All human beings in the world born with a special gift. It's a matter of exploring and galvanizing that makes you a perfect leader. So if we know the potential of what is the best in us, we are the best leader. So everybody has the leadership quality and can be a leader. Someone can be very successful in political field, someone can be successful in organizational development, someone can be very successful as a musician, someone can be very successful in everything they do very uniquely. So I truly believe that each of the person can be a leader.
Okay.
It's a matter of facilitations and nurturing and knowing it, exploring it.
Yeah. Wonderful. So that's two different views, and we'll be exploring that today. And everybody else pretty much came in along that spectrum. So we'll be talking about that. Does anyone else want to speak to that, or any thoughts that they'd like to reflect on what they heard?
I put a 3.5, and then the more I thought about it, I think the higher I would go, because I think a lot of it has to do with motivation and access to mentorship, education, etc. So I think I would actually maybe tend towards maybe like a 5 if that person had the motivation and the access.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Monica?
I put 5 because whether you're leading in a good or a bad direction, you're still a leader, and you're a leader for yourself. And sometimes bad leaders show you where you don't want to go and motivate you in other ways. And so the leadership spectrum is just that each person leads themselves, and how they happen to bring in the crowd and be either nurtured or diminished.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So when leaders are very enthusiastic and are committed to the task or project, people often go the extra mile and do whatever it takes to get the job done. Good leaders bring out the best in people. They engage people in creating the organization's vision and values and carrying out the goals. And they encourage excellence in others as well as pursuing it in themselves. They lead by example in all that they do. So I want you to kind of close your eyes and think about a leader that you've worked with. Think about a leader who brought out the best in you. Someone who energized you and made you feel connected. Someone who brought your ideas to life and you felt a lot of excitement in working with them. Think about how they acted, what they did, and how they made you feel. Then I want you to think, I'm sorry? Okay. Now think of a leader who was not that for you, who you didn't enjoy working with. What kind of things did they say or do? And how did they make you feel? Okay, don't want you to stay in that bad place too long. So So what were things that you saw or thought about when you had a leader that you worked with who was really wonderful and made you feel excited? What were some of the things, some of the attributes that they had, some of the skills that they had? How did they act that made you feel like they were a good leader? Ms. Wadeb?
Hello, yes. One of the amazing and influencing character in my life that when I met our well, he's not anymore alive, Maulana Dr. Abul Kalam Azad. He was the president of India. Abul Kalam is the great rocket man, they used to say. And I met him in New Delhi. He's a very short person. And what made me really good about it when I just stand next to him and shake hand is so childly, pure heart, pure soul. And even though he was the president of India, he never made it feel like it's just a very normal, very humble being. So the humbleness that attracted me a lot. And he shook hand and he was going to the podium and he said, just, oh, podium, height problem. Because he was short, so he needed something to stand on so he could be seen to the audience. And I go like, my God, this is the president of the country. And he speaks like so humble, so easy. And we were all by security standard, like don't move from your place. Mm-hmm. And he pulled our hand and he said, height problem. So then the security brought a little something to have him stand on. That one attracted me, the humbleness.
Wonderful. Someone else? A leader that really excited you?
Subi has her hand up.
Subi?
I remember my university teachers, and what inspired me was their ability to actually gauge the situation and lift up somebody who wasn't able to express or was feeling hesitant or felt unempowered. I don't know if that's the right word, but felt very reluctant to express because they felt that they were not doing the right thing or not saying the right things. I think just the ability to give space to everybody and listen to everybody is what inspired me about them.
Listen to everyone. That's wonderful. Who else? Monica?
The person I thought of was Maria. And the way she has such an amazing overview of URI, a depth of caring that really does bring out the best in other people. And I just think of the way that she adds love, care, prayers into everything she does, and direction, and sets a good model for us to follow.
So gives direction and sets a good model. Wonderful.
Alice has her hand up.
Somebody who made me feel seen and capable.
Mm-hmm. Barry?
So intentionality is a big thing. Somebody who is really intentional about building a relationship. And then somebody else who really was able to kind of tell when I was struggling with something and bring me through it without me even having to sort of express that I was struggling. I don't know what that is, maybe intuition.
Yes. So, yeah, intuitive, empathetic. Mm-hmm. Karima?
I would say sometimes somebody who sees the best, who sees the potential in myself or in people. So, and with unwavering, let's say, trusting the best in people, not naively, but still not being distracted by nitty-gritty small things, but seeing the best. And there is also something about serenity, that has to do with this trust, serenity, and goodwill. There's that positive attitude, unwavering.
Wonderful. Wonderful. In a way.
I cannot find the icon with the hand.
That's okay.
I don't know why.
It's under the participants when you have your participant list up.
Okay, thank you. I was looking in another place. For me, it came to my mind Elaine de Beauport, who was my master of the brain. And what I realized in myself when I say loving and respectful approach, I knew that she stamped it on me. Because what I liked very much is that she was a huge knowledge and experience, but she was very honest, and she connected with everybody from her heart and with a respect for the other. And even her huge knowledge, she can connect, and she was a respect for all the participants, different participants.
Yeah.
And what I can feel that important is we can have the skills, but the first approach is very important, because even if you don't have the skills, when you have a loving approach, a respectful approach to other, you can make the connection. Is what it came to me.
That's great. Anyone else like to add to this list?
Have we heard from Matt yet, Linda?
Barry?
Yeah, I just had one more thing, which was my experience of a good leader has been someone who's kind of given space to explore new ideas. So if you have an idea, someone who gives you the space to kind of run with it, and space and maybe also support, I guess.
Space and support, right? That's great. Frederica, do you have anything you'd like to add? Or can you can't see the screen.
No, I can, but I can hear. I'll add that the person who came to mind for me is really good at modeling in their life what they are encouraging others to do as a leader.
That's wonderful. Yes, thank you. Matt, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'm thinking someone who shows up for other people, whatever that means. There's a mentor who I paired with a young person whose job was just to kind of get them used to URI, but who would show up at her photography exhibition and just kind of stand at the back and just, show that he was there to support her. And always admired that kind of, showing up for other people kind of quality. But also, I think, I'm just thinking of a teacher in school that really kind of took me under his wing, but also didn't show favoritism. And I sort of found a newfound respect for him, respect him already when, he would be firm with me if he needed to be. When everybody else thought, he's the teacher's favorite or whatever. So I think that was an important thing to learn. Kind of showing up for others, but not kind of favoritism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I would add that I love people who can have fun and make fun of themselves when they make a mistake. Just acknowledge that. Monica.
I think it's very important for a good leader to share the direction and help bring in the creativity to refine it in any way that needs to go, but that you really do have kind of a shared vision that is shared.
Right. Subi?
So I think these points have been said, but I'll just probably add to it. One is adding to this point of giving direction. I think it also has to do with sharing opportunities, because a lot of time as a leader, there is more access to resources, which not all people are ready to share. From that point, the other thing that leads me to, as a leader, there is always a need. I would feel that a good leader is somebody who delegates more of responsibility and creates new leaders, because it's also an issue with sharing more of your powers that you hold. There is a lot of insecurity that comes in, specifically when it comes to intergenerational work and people from like different hierarchies and different grades of organizations. There is this insensitivity towards sharing powers and all of decision making issues and all that. And and all of this is because I've been reading your piece and it touched me so deeply that I can't express how it's just been an experience reading you. So and probably the last point that I want to add to the good leader part is the ability to create a shared vision with others. It's important to translate the vision, no matter how difficult it is or how big it is. So
that's great.
You create your vision with others is also an art.
Thank you. Anyway, you had your hand up?
Just want to add that I think it's very important, maybe it's related to Frederica's words, because honesty. I think honesty is very important in a leader.
I think that's true. And transparency, would you say? Yeah, that's great. All right, well, we have a lot of things about a good leader, so thank you. Karima, did you have another one?
Yeah, it just came to me that tactfulness is probably very important thing also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tactfulness. So, okay. Did you get tactfulness, Tony? Thank you. All right. So did anything come up about what bad leaders do that wasn't helpful for you? Monica's laughing, so she has something.
I just look at Donald Trump and I have to laugh, because whether it's the self-serving, whether it is the lies, whether it is the direction, it's just a whole package of bad leadership.
Self-serving, lies.
And unfortunately, the destructiveness that it can also bring, and the attention. It's just, and there are many of our world leaders in that situation. He's
exactly
governing time.
How about a leader that you've actually worked with or under closely? Maybe that's Sari.
So a lack of consistency, which I realized as we were going through the things with a good leader, I could just flip everything I thought of when I was thinking of a bad leader and put it on that side. So I would say a good leader is somebody who has consistency.
And how did that make you feel when you were working with that person?
Sort of like on edge or uneasy, because you're not sure sort of how behavior is going to be received or how you're supposed to act.
Yeah. Alice.
I worked for somebody once that said no all the time and had a really, really narrow perspective on what we could be doing, and it made me feel squashed.
Made you feel squashed.
Yeah, like made you shrunk, made small.
Yeah. No, I know squashed. I felt that one. Subi.
I was working with a CC member, and I felt bad because I was constantly picked about how I look, and my age, and because I'm petite, so I couldn't do any, like I couldn't perform well, is what he had to say. So it's gender, it's the physical outlook, and yeah, so I think that a leader needs to unbox and unpack and be very sensitive about the framing, the walls that exist, the invisible walls. So yeah, I think.
Yeah. Great.
So a bad leader is somebody who said.
Who made you feel bad by saying these things, and therefore you couldn't perform as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So a leader is someone who's not sensitive to the invisible walls.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I had experience with someone who, thought that they were identifying my potential and kind of nurturing my potential, but was so kind of inflexibly caught in their own vision of what that was, that I experienced it as being manipulated into a path that I didn't want to go in. It was very hard to disengage from that path, without kind of breaking that kind of mental block. Very difficult.
Right.
It wasn't easy to do that. Yeah.
Right. In a way, and then Monica.
Okay. I have to work with a person who I think is a bad leader because the authoritarianism.
The what? I'm sorry.
Authoritarian.
Yeah, I thought I can't say it. Authoritarian. Yes.
Authoritarian person. And also he practiced exclusion. Sometimes the exclusion of youth in the team, exclusion of women for imposing their ideas, his ideas. So not only in positive, but when I feel that lies, as Monica says in the first, when a leader has the practice of lie, I think it's very difficult for the community or for people who are acting with, because we feel very bad and we have to lead with this, to have to go with this, and it's not easy to work or to live or to chair or to work with people like this.
Monica?
When someone takes all the credit without realizing that they may have done nothing, or doesn't bring out the importance of working with a whole group to accomplish something. And when someone who takes a title to a way that is really inappropriate, and you don't want to follow them, but because they have XYZ, you have to, or whatever.
Because of their title?
Because of their title, or because of,
like president. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, yeah, I think the one about taking credit is an important one. I see that happening a lot of times to low-income people and low-income organizations, and it's often what splits people apart. So I'm glad, Subi, you talked about invisible walls. We're going to move into talking about that next. So did people get to read? Did people have time to read the chapters we sent? So what some people did, it seems like some people probably didn't. But when people are targeted and discriminated against and oppressed over a period of time, oh, you know what? I just skipped something. Before we go there, before we go into internalized depression, thanks, Tony. I want you to take 5 minutes and reflect on your own leadership. And I ask people to have something to write or draw on. But I want you to just take a few minutes and think about what your strengths and qualities as a leader are, and what you would like to strengthen and improve in your leadership now that you've seen this list of good leaders. What are some things that are already your strengths, and what would you like to improve or strengthen in your leadership? So just take the next 5 minutes and write. And if you want to press the little hand or say you're done afterwards in chat, I will keep an eye on it and see how long it takes people.
Can we have the list back on the screen again that we just generated?
Yeah, we could put the list and the other way, I think. Good leaders.
Thank you.
Sorry, I realize some of us have different needs. Can we maybe have the questions also, or maybe the prompt questions put in the chat box?
Sure. I'll put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
Oops. I wanted to say that to everyone. There you go. Okay. People like to share some of the things they might have written. Monica.
I was really touched with what Subi said about the intergeneration and passing things along, and knowing that I'm at the end of my career and wanting to pass it along and looking for ways to do that, and yet bringing in new ways of doing things that I don't even know what to ask for because I don't understand it.
Gotcha. Okay. Others? Alice?
I'm interested in co-creating or in learning about the visions for all the different regions of that RCs have, the visions that RCs have for their region.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I found myself wondering how other people experience me. So looking at that list and feeling like I think and I strive to do most of those things, but you know, I don't necessarily have a barometer for maybe how open other people experience me to be, right? Do people really feel like they can share any idea or anything with me? So anyway, it just made me think about how we're somewhat limited, like in our own self-reflection, and that we need like honest people around us to like give us feedback.
Sure. Great. Subi.
Looking at the list, I just felt to be a little more patient, because with leadership has like good and bad side of everything. So a leader also needs to take up the bad things and take up the first lead of facing the consequences. So looking at all the good things, when it's about talking of love, we might just be able to talk to people about love, but what is it about being a leader and being strong in personally from like inside?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
being like a little more patient and a little less stressful is what I want to learn out of the list.
Great. Thank you. Someone else? Hanoi?
Okay, when I think my strength, my quality is the facility to approach people, to make connections,
Mm-hmm.
and the capacity to respect all the thoughts and opinion of people from different age and different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I need, or I feel I need the skills how to move or how to manage myself in the middle of bad leaders. Not only in URI, my work here, but also in my country, because we have a lot of bad leaders now in positive and the authoritarianism. So, and I have to manage myself inside this, and I hate injustice. So I think I don't have the skills. I need more skills to move with this, to move inside this kind of people around.
Gotcha. Yes. Great. Now, this isn't something everyone has to share, but if anybody else wants to share something, let me know. Okay. This what happened?
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to really develop, I was just drawing, this is it. Speaking, I would really like to develop more on because this is where I wanted to pay attention more, public speaking. And things, I think I'm very confident of something that I was just drawing about creativity with my music. So there's a tabla and the instrument. I think I'm pretty flexible. I can go anywhere. I can be very cool. No food, no bed, no sleeping. So this is, I think, made me very easygoing.
I'm still laughing on the food thing.
I know. And I'm very passionate also with the work I do. I really enjoy it. And so I'm truly feel very honored. And that's where I feel inspired to be more committed to the work that I do. This is what I would like to be with people always I love the community work.
Right.
This is what my greatest strength. But of course now the public speaking, one of the greatest things that I would like to learn more efficiently. Thank you.
Great. So, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that as someone who has done a lot of public speaking and started out saying, I'll do anything except speak in public, fundraise, or write. That's how I started out as an organizer. So, okay. Well, now we'll move on to talking about invisible walls. Defining invisible walls is when people are discriminated against or oppressed for a long period of time, they often internalize and begin to believe and make it part of their own self-image about themselves as well as others like them. So you often wonder why people of color start fighting their own instead of standing in together, or why poor people blame other poor people. And it's because of internalized oppression that they begin to believe everything that's said about them, the myths, the misinformation that society communicates and about their group. And so if you could go to that previous slide, Tony. This slide is the only way I could kind of show that, you know, when I talk about invisible walls, that internalized oppression, for people who aren't oppressed, they can just walk through that door, or they walk through and they don't realize there's a wall there. They just are able to freely move back and forth, while people who have internalized oppression meet a brick wall, and they often feel like they can't go through it, or there's things that stop them that are both societal as well as sometimes self-belief. You know, you grow up, certainly I grew up feeling like I would never be smart enough, or I could never take on, I could never be a leader. So you just feel like there's nothing there. And you wonder how other people get to the other side, because you don't see how they can easily move through that. And then you begin to blame yourself more and more. So it's a lot about self-blame. So go to the next slide. I'm wondering if any of you have ever felt like that sense of disempowerment, not being stood, not understanding options. I write in my book that, you know, people would ask me, well, why didn't you do it this way? Or when you had to drop out of college, why didn't you apply to another place? Why didn't you do this or that? And I said, you know, people say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but some people don't even have the first egg, let alone the basket. So, you know, I didn't know I had other options. I wasn't aware of that. No one ever told me. Not feeling like you can question or challenge anyone or any ideas, even among your peers. let alone those in power, feeling like others always have more power than you, feeling like you can't speak your own ideas, and that you're not smart or not good enough. Has anyone felt that before or experienced these things? Anyone? No one felt internalized depression?
Anaway
Subi.
has her hand up.
Okay. Subi, Anaway, and then Biswadeb.
If I'll be honest about it, I think probably every week.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think somebody else should speak first.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I think somebody else should speak.
Okay. In a way.
I think I'm going to cry also, Asumi.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I'm not going to cry, but I connect with his feeling.
Okay.
In two sides, I connected. One in my work in URI in the monthly meetings of the team. That it was something that I started since 4 years ago. And before it was very good this meeting because I invited also the young people I have as assistants in the region. And in the past, it was very good to have the ideas of everybody, and the decision was like a consensus. And it was very friendly, the meetings. And it was very easy to work with this and in harmony. But since 2 years ago, it's every month I really feel very bad having these meetings because since 2 years ago, these people, the bad leaders, ignores or exclude young people, the assistants, like they don't were in the meeting. They even say hello, Adriana, hello, David. It's like they were not there. And since 2 years ago, he imposed that I don't have a vote. He imposed that just trust his vote. And that the regional coordinator cannot be, how do you say that? Okay, so I feel like I have to silence things in order to have a good meeting. I cannot express myself as I wanted, honestly and truly, in order to have a good meeting and have the objective, the goals of the monthly meeting accomplished. And I don't lose the goal. My goal is to have the decision to concrete the plans, the activities of the plans. So I feel like, I have no, I cannot question, I cannot in those meetings, okay?
Yes.
And also here, because of the polarization, this government, which is a dictatorship, make very difficult relation when you have to have meeting with people from the government, or you want to have a goal, but there are people of the government there, so I feel I have no power there. I feel I have to
Yeah.
silence too, and I don't have the power if I want to arrive to the goal. So is what I connected with Subi, and I cried.
Yes, that's okay. That's okay. And you'll notice I always get tears when anyone else cries. Internalized depression is very painful, especially as you begin to recognize it. And it's not something that goes away because you get more power. It's something that can put you back in that space and re-traumatize you constantly, as Subi said, every week. Bizwa Deb, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I think I remember my days earlier when I started working with the interfaith organizations with URI. I was very young, and I wanted to questions always in public debate, in seminar and workshop, specifically meeting the religious leaders. And I would have been said, shut up, simply by the leader, like, young boy, you would not know anything. And I guess every young people, this is so much cultural drawback in our country. And that aspect, intergenerational leadership, has a lot of importance in, I remember that going to every religious leaders in a public speaking, when we would ask, would say a simple answer that they would not engage themselves, and even they would not feel that I was important, my question was important to be answered. And it was very difficult, very, very difficult. And so that was really tough. And I would go back to my dad, ask him about that, and thank that he would give me more training, a little bit more teaching. And I feel it when we work with young people these days, culturally in our country still exists a lot.
Yes.
Especially when you're working with the interfaith, an organization working with the interfaith promotion. And it's not only interfaith, but in every aspect, every time. But now, I did a little bit. I would end with saying that I found it truly to overcome. I would like to add that it's about the creating kind of anti-oppressive framework in our work, to bringing more spiritual approach, which educates people. This is where we are working now, truly bringing spirituality into it. So yes, every day.
Thank you. Subi, do you want to speak now, or okay?
So I see it at two ends. The issue with like having to justify yourself to make your own stand. It doesn't matter how good or how capable you are and how creative and how persistent you are. You have to do like that extra edge, with a lot of people would not need to do because of the power position that they are in or the age that they have. And this ultimately also leads to a space where you're taken for granted because you feel that you're more on the working hands rather than on the decision making table, reducing the ability to question and challenge the existing system, infusing in creativity because you know what's right. Intuitively we just know what's right, but just the fact that it needs to go like a little or more, maybe much more to build your own case is, at a lot of time actually takes up a toll.
Thank you. What helps people when, Monica?
I wanted to share something that wasn't quite as tearful, but something that I think is very important to this conversation. And for me, technology and the lack of technology and knowing a little bit and how to screw it up, and how that just not understanding the whole. I can't tell you how much I respect all that's going on WhatsApp, different things, and I feel like I put information in the wrong place. If I try to do a Google Doc, I'm not sure whether I'm touching the whole thing, and I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to show my skills. And one of them was on these calls in particular. I didn't understand that there were 2 sheets. I only put down the dates for what I saw on my phone because I couldn't get to it. And it's just not knowing enough to even know you don't know it.
Right.
And so I think that I wanted to share, particularly with the younger people, when you are feeling so powerless. Believe me, you have so much power on the way you communicate and the excellence that you can show your work immediately. I am so proud of you, and I want to learn more from you, because I think if I learned how to do it, it would be easier to share, but I haven't taken the time to get there.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I like you saying you don't even know what you don't know. I think that's important to remember. Karima.
Yeah, just to share a little bit. I think that internalized oppression, I think I felt mostly when I was younger as a woman. That I remember I always looked at the list of Nobel Prize laureates, and they were all men, etc. And so that leads, I think for me, it led to some wanting to be more male, so to say, attributing things to being male and wanting, oh, why are we not that, and trying to be that. And I think I was lucky to have healing. I feel much better now, much better by supportive men, very so. And in an I think objective way, it's more Muslims in Germany, where I just know there is the wall is there is no access to the structures. I'm not visible as a Muslim. I'm not of color. I'm white, and I don't wear a scarf and all of that. So I'm aware that I'm very privileged, but I'm also aware what happens to others. And yeah, that gives me a lot of passion, and I want to continue doing that work, I think, forever, and to create just structures.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it can be really confusing when you have an oppression that might be invisible to others. We see that with lighter skinned people of color, or, the oppression might look different, even though they still have some of the same barriers. So that's an important thing to recognize. I like that you said you began to heal through supportive men. And one of the things with one of the projects that Spirit in Action has here in the United States is called Standing in Our Power, and it's for women of color in this country. And it's about not trying to emulate the current way that we think about leadership, but trying to say women's leadership, and particularly women of color's leadership, is very powerful and very brilliant, and would be a way that would benefit everyone to work from. So not to say that we have to try to be like someone else, but how do we actually say, wow, low-income people, people of color, young people have a different way of doing things, and sometimes, often, they can be better ways, I think women have taught a lot of men how to lead from the heart. And it doesn't mean that all men don't lead from the heart, but I think women have been put down because we're too emotional. And that's, to me, one of the strongest things in leadership. When I see a leader actually cry, when I saw President Obama cry, I was so proud of him. I was so proud of him for being vulnerable and showing his heart. And I was like, you get taught that by women, because men are socialized to not do that. And I feel like that we get told we have to be a certain way. We have to act white, we have to act older, we have to act smart, or I mean that smart by more intellectual or academic. And sometimes just our way of leading is even better, and we'll reach more people. It reaches more people. So I wonder if there's any other last pieces of what gives people strength to overcome internalized depression.
And Linda, check the chat for a good question.
Okay.
I think that was.
Yes, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just thinking about some of what Enoy shared and about my own experience. What is the difference between sort of going against that internalized oppression and refusing to be, owned by it, and also operating within systems of power and structures that we have to operate in order to get things done. So, as a woman, operating within male-dominated structures and sort of operating as I'm expected to operate to get things done, sort of for the greater good, as I know I was talking about doing. Like, she operates in that system because she kind of, keeps quiet because she feels like she can't, but she needs to reach the goal. Anyway, it's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but it just seems like a tension.
No, I think, all of us operate within these systems of oppression. And sometimes what happens is we take that in to the point we listen to those messages and we start believing them to the point that we're not able to step into leadership. So that's my point in talking about the internalized piece, is when we start to believe that those structures are better, then we lose our voice. Even if we're trying to operate in them, there's a way that we're not in our strongest leadership power. We don't have our strongest voice. We get silenced. We might learn to operate in them, and, and I can do that. I can hold my own, but there's a part of me that's hiding who I really am when I do that.
Right.
And so, one of the ways that I have found that helps me is to, for one, we'll move to that. Let's go to the next slide. What are some of the things, let me ask you, some of the strategies to counteract the internalized depression that we might feel? What are our strategies? And after we do this, we'll take a quick break and then come back. But what are our strategies that support us to step out of internalized depression? So I think someone mentioned having an analysis of oppression. I think when people begin to understand that, they begin to go, oh, that's what I was feeling. It's why I often talk about my own internalized depression, not because I want to keep talking about it, because I know other people connect with it and maybe haven't named it, but when they hear me say, like I've spoken in many college gatherings, and when I talk about growing up poor and how it made me feel like I'm not smart, like I'm not good enough, I don't need to keep saying that. But when I do say it, people say, oh my gosh, I feel that way. And I was too ashamed to say it. It's why I said I was going to come out of the closet as a poor person when I came back from Nicaragua and saw how proud people were of themselves and understood it was a problem of how the government was structuring things. And it made me realize, oh, this isn't about our fault. This is about systemic oppression. And so when I share that with others, other people begin to connect with me. And that helps us have power when we have our peers who can help understand. So now when I go speak to someone and someone says something terrible to me, like once a week, Subi, I can go, call up my friend and go, you will not believe what this person just said to me and how it made me feel. And you begin to acknowledge it, and you begin to share it with others who go, oh, I know exactly how you're feeling. And so I think that's an important piece. Does anybody have other things that they would add to strategies?
There are good things in the chat.
I see, okay. Spirituality, bringing in practices from ancient wisdom. I think that's really important. That certainly helps me. Karima was agreeing, exchanging with others in a similar place. And books around similar places. I get letters very often from people who've read my book and said, oh my gosh, I so related. And to work with people who are more privileged, who are supportive. I think that's important to help them both be supportive and understand at the same time. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I remember getting shot down at some, not literally, but being put down for asking questions, as Biswadev talked about when he was younger. And and working on self-esteem, I think that's great, but I think it's working on self-esteem with someone who understands internalized depression, because it's not like, you know, you can just pick yourself up and go, I'm not going to believe this anymore. You can say that over and over, but it's working with others that understand how it works that I think makes that happen. Any other thoughts?
Linda, I was just going to say that the part about storytelling I think is really important. I was reading your 5th chapter again this morning, and it was reminding me about how I can know things, but hearing a person tell stories can help get the knowledge out of my head and into my heart. And also for me, since I know you, and I know that when you write in the first person in that book, those are experiences that happen to you, that makes it more real for me.
Right.
And then it causes me to reflect on my own experience and make more connections between what you're saying, what I'm feeling, and not just what I'm knowing, but also what I'm feeling and what I've also lived. So.
Right.
And that's encouraging. That's a strategy for support. As somebody was saying, reading. That's it.
Yes. Thank you. Monica?
I'm thinking about you, and I don't know if you read the comments I made. One, in reading your book, I could hear your voice, and it was really very soothing, and I thought that was lovely. I was starting to explain to my husband about the white privilege and the connection with that as being a racist. And that link, I both want to ask a question: did I read it correctly? Or and look for strategies to really both address it internally, locally, and in our work.
I think what I was trying to say in my book is that by being white, even if you're the least prejudiced person you could possibly be, you still benefit by a system of oppression. You still benefit by getting to walk through that door and not even know there's a wall there. And so in that way, by being white, are racist through our privilege. through our privilege and power. Same thing with age, same thing with gender. But I think if I was rewriting that book today, I wouldn't talk about it quite in the same way, because I don't think people always feel that power. You know, if you tell a low-income Black male that he has power and privilege, he's going to look at you like you're crazy, even though he might have power and privilege in certain situations. I probably would talk about it differently, but we do benefit. And I remember not understanding racism because I was white, I was low income, I was, you know, living in the projects. But I went to a restaurant that I liked to go that was really inexpensive with some of my African American friends, and we were refused service. And this is in the South, in South Carolina. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've been coming here and getting service, and I have this privilege, even though I may not feel privileged. So that's why I named it Invisible Walls, because it's like we don't even realize we have privilege until we don't, right? And so, yes, I think we all white people have a privilege in this country that we're not even always aware of. So thank you for asking that question. We'll come back to this because we're going to be talking about how internalized oppression affects people from stepping into leadership, and how we can, what of these strategies can we use, our own coping strategies, to help folks who are volunteers and leaders in our community be able to step into leadership. And so I'm seeing some more comments. Everybody can keep reading those, and we'll send those out at the end. But I want to give people a chance to take a quick break. If you could take a little bio break if you need it. And if you want to stay and continue to ask questions, I'm okay to stay here and answer. So, but I want to give people that opportunity to take a break. Like 5 minutes, just a short break.
Good,
For the very simple reason is that it's a very diverse network.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to translate the social action side of interfaith is something which like requires reiteration, or I don't know what. So I'm just very curious to understand.
Yeah.
No, so
let's talk about that. So I want to talk about the different levels of volunteers and leaders within URI. So it seems like you have, you know, your board. That's one group of leaders who are volunteers, right? And then you have the circles. And a lot of people in those circles, how do you help recruit or help your CCs recruit volunteers, seeing them as not just people to do the work, but to actually become leaders? And so, Subi just asked this question: how do you get them excited? How do you get them interested, especially if they already are? Usually they're pretty busy, you know. A lot of people work more than one job and they have children to take care of. So how do you see these volunteers as potential volunteers, and how do you recruit them? And when I say volunteers, I'm saying volunteer/leaders.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I think Karima had her hand up first. I didn't mean to jump.
Okay, Karima.
I don't have I just want to make a reflection. I think for me it's a challenge, and it also has to do with, okay, and so they could only be so play, and yeah, so how to best manage my limited time, that's a challenge. So, but I don't have the answer, so I pass to others for the answers.
So,
one thing I was going to say is I had somebody recently when we were at the parliament who was on the planning team for my assembly, and he said to me, you know, basically, without you having reached out to me to invite me onto the planning team, I would have never thought that that was something that I could do, that was even possible for me to do, that was even a place I could step into. And so, I mean, yes, that I did a mass, you know, message, who wants to be on the planning team, and that got me a lot of good people. But we needed to fill in some gaps, particularly around diversity. And so in that moment, I reached out individually to people. So having him say that to me was just a reminder of the power of that, which I think is a lesson in a lot of things. When thinking about our CCs, they're often asking like, oh, how do we get more diverse people? And it's usually not just to send a mass message, it's to actually use your relationships to call people into leadership.
Right. I think there's also the piece of how you follow up. So once you ask the volunteer to do something and someone steps in, maybe they just do a little thing. And I think about a woman, and we do something called a leadership pie. And I often do this in groups where we have divided this circle up into all these slices. And I will ask them to put into the pie slices what we need in leadership in our group. And they'll put all these different things that we need, public speaking, but we also need people who are helping keep the office clean and, you know, the grounds clean or the playground clean. And we need people who are doing childcare and all. So then we'll ask the question, can one leader do all these things? Does anyone in this room, can you do all these things? And people go, no. And we begin to find things. And so I often think of this one woman who would only volunteer to clean the office. But when she started doing that and being around us and being invited to trainings, she soon started doing much bigger jobs and eventually became the block captain in her neighborhood. So getting people to move and honoring each job as equally important. You know, going out to speak publicly is as important as doing childcare. And so we're not saying, you know, one or the other is a higher job. And we talked about self-interest. Someone mentioned self-interest and how we got people interested. We did that through a process of listening to them and making connections. So we did peace work, right? We were a peace organization, and we focused on military budget, which was the majority of our tax dollars were going to the military budget, like 57%. But so we started helping people who were thinking about lack of health care, lack of education, lack of housing that was affecting them personally, to link to where was the money going for those things that we didn't have. But I think there's one really important thing, and that is that once someone steps in, you celebrate that person, you honor that person, you recognize that person. Every time you have a big gathering, you say all the people who've been volunteering to help the work happen. You put out press releases with their names in it. You put up a list of all the volunteers who've been working for the project where everybody can see it. and you keep doing training and more training and more training. And one of the things I just want to address that you brought up, Karima, is that people think the paid person is paid to do all the work. And that's, I think, our job really should not be doing any of the work, but actually our job is to coordinate and empower volunteers to step into leadership as organizers. And that takes more time. It takes more time than doing it ourselves. But in the long run, if we see our job as not doing all the work, but actually empowering volunteers to take on leadership and do that work, then and spend your time training and mentoring and recognizing and celebrating volunteers, you're going to have people really excited about joining. And then the one other thing I'll say, and we're going to break into small groups here in a minute and talk about this, is small victories. Like when we started talking in a neighborhood, a very low-income neighborhood where more than half the houses were below living standards. Some didn't have running water. This is in a rural area in North Carolina. One thing people wanted was dumpsters because they didn't have a place to put trash. There was no trash pickup. And they had this huge dump yard that brought lots of rats into their communities, and they'd bury trash in their own yard, and that would bring in rats. And they wanted dumpsters. And so we began to help them have these meetings with county officials to demand dumpsters. And the organizer at the time called me up and he said, you know, I went to school with the mayor. I can give him a call and I could get us dumpsters in that community in a week. And I was like, absolutely not. That's not your job. We're not a service organization. We're an organization that's empowering people to work for their own victories. And so he didn't make the call, and it took maybe 3 more months before people were able to get this dumpsters into their communities where they could put their trash. And we held a huge street celebration. Everyone in the community was out, and we had music, and we were dancing, and we're celebrating this, and they cleaned up the dump yard. And after that, they went on to do major stuff and are recognized nationally on how to improve their communities and ran for office and all of these things. Sari, you raised your hand.
Yes. So I think it's an incredible story. And if the people in the community knew that you had someone, an ally, who was going to make a phone call and make it happen in one day, would that have upset them?
Possibly, but it wouldn't have empowered them.
Yeah.
They would keep looking for that support and help, because that's the first thing that people might want to look for. But when they won and knew they had won, they were so excited. And you know, not everybody in the community was willing to even help. Only like maybe 1 out of 15 people said, yeah, I'll go to the meeting with you. We'll go to the meeting and talk. But afterwards, after that celebration, over half the people started wanting to be a part of this group. You know, it was like, because everybody was invited to the celebration. So almost the whole community helped clean up the place. So this is a really important thing around balance of power, because he had the power to make that happen. But had he used it, it would have stayed, they would have looked to him for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
They would have looked to him for the next thing. As a white male, this was a community that was all people of color. And so instead, they begin to understand and feel oh, I can make things happen. I can win things. I can make a difference. So it may start with that tiny little piece of just getting dumpsters in the community, but can go on to build into huge ways. So I always look for little victories. What is one little thing? Because when you go through the community, they may say, well, we need a hospital here. Well, you're not going to win that in overnight. But when we heard dumpsters is one of the issues, we felt like that's something we can work with that will be a tiny victory. It was big for the community, but it was something we felt we could win. And that's how we started. So we're gonna talk more about this because I want you to tell a story about when you've been excited to volunteer. And think about something you volunteered. It could be when you were younger or now, that you actually came back the next time. Because as you know, you get volunteers to come, but they don't keep coming back. Why didn't they come back? What was it that brought you back the second time around when you became a volunteer? And we're going to break into, let's see, how many people do we have? I think we could break into, Tony, can we break into 3 groups of 3, or do you want to do 2 groups?
I already have 4 groups of 2 set up.
Okay, that's fine. So 4 groups of 2. And you're going to take about 5 minutes to share with each other, 2.5 minutes each. And I think we can give you, in a way, you had a question?
I want to comment briefly of what we were talking before, because I appreciate very much reading your chapters. And reading it, I realized that this year we had 2 meetings with one of the indigenous young people from Central America, the cooperation circles. And Alice was with me in these 2 meetings. And I can, after your reading, it was very important because I could conscious things that happened there with the community. Volunteers, we have less money for the meeting with the youth indigenous people from the Central America. But we could do it because the community, which is a very poor community, they came volunteers and they cleaned the ground floor for us. And that was from land. But when we came to the work session every day, they have leaves like a carpet in the workroom. And it was really beautiful, the care that community volunteers did. And also now in the Temuco meeting from indigenous women, it was also beautiful, the volunteer work of this community. The initial ceremony, they called the community, surrounded the healing man space where we have the ceremony. They make the food for us. And the people, our indigenous trustee, she found a place. So people from there found a place that you say in your reading. It was very important because it's a very good place. And the volunteer work helped us to do these 2 meetings. Alice was there with both of them. Thank you for your book. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, okay, so we're going to break into groups of 2, and you're going to tell a story about when you were excited to volunteer and why you came back a second time. And what we want to hear when you come back is what was it that kept you involved, kept you excited, and brought you back that second time around. So take about 2.5 minutes each to tell your story, and you'll share with someone, and we're putting you into groups now. I think, can y'all see this? Tony's putting you in the groups. Great. Okay. Tony, can you hear me?
We obeyed too early.
It's too
I
early.
want to go back to my group.
Yeah, Anyway and I were in the middle of talking, and I said, we're told we have to come back. We better click on this.
Uh-oh. Well, I'd love to give you more time, and maybe afterwards you could go back into your little groups. What I want to ask, because I want to have enough time to keep getting through things, is for you to say one thing that kept you as a volunteer, that kept you coming back as a volunteer, or one thing that helped you continue. And we're going to keep that list as a way to think about recruiting and sustaining volunteers. So I'm going to ask each of you to just name one thing, and then we'll ask the next person, and we'll keep going around as long as we can. So Monica, do you want to start and say one thing that kept you volunteering?
My passion for the issue of nuclear abolition.
Okay, great. Your passion? Okay. Alice?
I felt useful.
Felt useful. So they made you feel useful.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Karima?
Am I unmuted? Yeah. Friendship, and that I didn't want to let other friends down, or relationships.
Yeah, friendship and not letting others down. Subi?
Sense of accomplishment.
Sense of accomplishment. So someone made you feel that too, right? Okay. So that's what I'm talking about when I say we keep appreciating and honoring in a way.
The commitment and the solidarity with other volunteers.
Solidarity with others, yes. Frederica?
It's personally fulfilling.
Personally fulfilling, great. Sari?
I think most of mine have been said. One that hasn't been said was feeling a part of something bigger. So I was working on a specific project, but the volunteer coordinator sort of had ways of helping me see how it fit into the whole.
That's great. This what, Deb?
Joyful and inspired.
Joyful and inspired. Any others that people want to add?
The opportunity to bring something unique to the situation.
You brought something unique.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Alice?
It was something I was able to do, so I felt good about being capable of the job.
Capable of the job, able to do. Great. Any others? Subi?
Spiritually fulfilled.
Spiritually fulfilling. I think all of these are really important things. One of the things that we found is that even though people were working a lot, they had kids, we always had a place for kids to come. We always had food, so everybody could participate. And what happened is people, when they were passionate, sometimes would come if we had a big project going on every evening of the week, because we also had music and celebrations, and people could see they were accomplishing things. I can't express how much little handwritten notes to people about thanking them. I don't know what kind of appreciations you received during this time, but even social media, things like Volunteer of the Week and making sure it's getting spread out. And community. You know, people talked about friendship, solidarity. That means so much to people, a spiritual community. People need that more than ever, and they are hungry for it. So if you provide that as part of the work, they're going to keep coming. So is there things that get in the way of using these strategies? these kind of strategies? Yes, time.
And if,
Yeah.
if it shifts all over.
Yeah. Like I did personal handwritten like thank yous to our assembly planning team, but I didn't finish the last one until like 2.5 months, 3 months after the gathering was done. But I saw some of those people recently and they were like, thank you so much. And no one even mentioned that they were 3 months late. So
Oh, wow.
I I was convinced of the effectiveness of the medium of a handwritten note.
Yes, yes. People love that. So time is a big issue. And how can we recruit and retain more volunteers as part of our everyday work? How do we live into that practice of building leadership? And, you know, I said earlier on that the delegation of getting people to do the work takes more time. So as you think about your work plans for next year, which is coming up soon, I believe, you might want to think about how much time do you want to shift into actually having time to recruit and train and retain volunteers as part of your work. That you're actually, because it might take longer than you doing it yourself, some things, and obviously there are things you're going to have to do yourself, but as staff, but are there things that you can bring in more volunteers, more leaders into? Karima?
That fits well with my question. I think it'd be really interesting exchanging a little bit about a list of tasks. I'm wondering, is there something that is my core task and I couldn't pass it on? And yeah, if so, what is something that is well, or is a good thing for a volunteer? I mean, I'm thinking of that.
Yeah, and I think when you talk with your peers and others, that you can start to think about that. Maybe people share their list of tasks that they would like, and think about that it might take more time in this coming year, but in the next year, you might be able to accomplish twice as much. Or, you know, in the third year, 3 times as much. So it might mean actually accomplishing less in the first year to be able to do something like that, but you're building leadership. And I just want to encourage y'all to think that way. And so I want to tell you a story about Canadian geese. And I don't know if these kind of geese are in every, I don't assume they're in every country, but the Canadian geese this time of year, we see them here in the South because they're coming to the South, they're migrating to warmer weather, and they fly in a V formation. And they honk constantly. So you can see them in the sky flying over, honking in these beautiful V formations. And as each goose flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the geese behind it, adding a 71% greater flying range. 71% greater flying range. So if you think about the time you may take flapping your wings, you're adding 71% for the people behind you. When the goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels resistance to flying, and it'll jump back into formation pretty quickly to take advantage of that power behind it. And when the leader gets tired, they're able to rotate back into the formation, and another goose takes the point position. And they keep honking to encourage those in front to keep up their speed. So this has all been done by scientists, but people who've watched it and observed it, known this for many more years before the scientists came along and proved it true. And so it's a great example, I think, of leadership, because if you have other leaders, you can drop out when you get sick, or you can step back and let others take on some of the leadership roles and take turns. But it takes training. You know, I see a lot of people trying to take turns in facilitation, and people haven't been trained to facilitate, and it's a disaster. And they end up feeling bad. The group ends up feeling bad and thinking this shared leadership can never work. But it takes training, it takes support, and making sure people are in the right roles. Karima, you had your hand up.
Yeah, as you were saying, it's an advantage. There is also the fear of not being needed anymore. Somehow.
But I think that's true. I think a lot of leaders feel like they're not needed anymore. I feel like if you're playing a coordination role and you're training others, almost all my work now is all just training others. And there's always a role for us as we move on. I think that's a really important thing to recognize and know that you don't have, I mean, I think some leaders fear giving up power for that reason. And it can be complicated for people thinking that way, but it's important to know that each job can, you know, the geese are still flying in formation and they can move back into leadership as they step, you know, as the others get tired. So, but the training, I think moving more in, as you think about your work and thinking about how do you move more into empowering others, because that's the only way that URI will continue to grow, right? It's the only way that you'll continue to spread peace throughout the world is if you are empowering leaders every day and moving forward. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want you to think about the first step over the next month that you would work to strengthen your own leadership, and then one step in how you would help volunteers develop leadership. And you can write in chat or you can just say it out loud. But one thing to strengthen your own leadership would be taking a step to work at bringing in more volunteers. That would be one way to do it, but you might have something else you want to do. But think about that one step that you want to put into practice. One thing you want to commit to. And it could be as simple as, I'm going to make a task list out of my jobs. I'm going to work on my work plan in December to incorporate more time. It can be simple things like that. But how are you going to put this into practice? Monica, you're on mute, honey.
Dylan. Oh, no.
There you are.
I'm going to do an end of the year party for the UN reps.
Great.
And ask them to bring someone new to the party, I think. That would be a good
great idea. Yeah, great idea.
I wouldn't have thought of it without this particular discussion. Thank you.
I think that I will, as I'm working on my work plan and various tasks, just keep an eye on what needs to be done by me and what can be done by others.
Subi?
In the next year, I want to create more recognized spaces for people to fill in, and that's how I'll probably try internships or other recognized positions that can help them grow as leaders.
This is why Deb is going to connect with universities to get more internships. That's great. And as you know, interns take a lot of time. They take more of your time, but that's what we're talking about. Alice says there's always more people that can be recruited or trained or supported to do more and enjoy it more. So the coordinator trainer role is always critically important. I added critically. Who else?
For me, it's the same. I want, like Saris, I want to speak with my team, the volunteers, the board, and the other staff, and start thinking of a list. What we need to, we need to do, and what others could do.
Great, great. In a way.
Okay, I'm going to add. We always do consultation to the CCs to have their input to do the plan for next year. So I'm going to include their opinion, of what they think we can do and what is the potential of volunteers that they have in their CCs and how can we include them. Their ideas, the ideas of the CCs.
Right. Terry says, what more could I do if someone else was doing other things? I think that's a great question. I think in the beginning, it will take more of your time to support people and follow up, but in a longer term, you will have more time to do other things. And just keep supporting more and more people to move into leadership. And yeah.
Linda, I didn't get Subi's written down. Do you remember what it was?
It was about creating more recognized spaces.
Say that again, creating more
recognized spaces.
More recognized spaces.
In the institution. Okay. So that they feel accountable to it.
Thank you.
I'm working on recruiting another volunteer at this point to our leadership team, so I'm just reminded to be very clear about what they will get out of it.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. I think that's really important. All right. Thank you for making that commitment and working toward that. And if you have questions, we'll have coaching in another month, and we can address, that at that point. There's a quote that I like to use when I'm asking people to step up and do work. It says, you can't pour from an empty cup, so you need to take care of yourself first. And so taking care of yourself doesn't mean, some people think that sounds selfish. It doesn't mean me first. It means me too. And I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulging, but it's an act of surviving, and it's not selfish to love yourself and take care of yourself and make your own happiness a priority. It actually helps you be a better leader. It helps you be able to do the work more. And so this isn't what we talked about, but I wanted to add it as part of our closing to really think about how do we take care of ourselves, because we can get so busy with work that we forget about that. And while you honor other people and encourage them to do the work, I want you to honor yourself and think about how you're going to do that as we are moving into the new year. What would that look like for you to take care of yourself as an activist, as an organizer, so that you can be the best mentor, leader, trainer, coordinator that's possible. And I just don't want us to forget that. Does that make sense? So I wanted to leave 5 minutes for us to do a short evaluation of just what, did we put a slide in for this, Tony? What you thought is good about the training and what you would improve? Because I feel like we often run out of time and people don't have time to fill out the evaluations afterwards. So what did you find helpful and what would you improve? So Tony's going to capture your comments. And you can write them in, or you can...
Linda, is this about today, or is it about beyond today?
About today. This is for today's training. What was helpful? What did you like? And what would you improve?
I like the mix of methods, reflection and groups, working all together, you telling us things. So I think that, these changes are really nice.
Monica?
I just put a question in the chat room about one of the invisible walls place. I would like us to talk more about how we can, either for ourselves or for others, lead someone from the empty wall to even showing the door. Some of the strategies needed to bring people to a new perspective.
Sure. Thank you. This one, Dan.
Yeah. I like this is because it's indicated the process of healing. We talked about internal oppressions. I think was very important, helpful. One of the challenges that may be an overall for me is to really having one trainings once a month and the last month, getting like a lot of gap for me to connect all together. So I do write every training, but because of a lot of travel in between and getting a little bit of long time between that, losing the sense, the rich discussions of every meeting to connect with another one. So that is my challenge. It's not particularly for this one, it's just overall.
Yeah, I hear that. And it's why I try to ask at the end for a next step for you to start putting something into practice. Because I think we can have a training and then it's gone. And if you have something, a goal that you're going to work toward, and that you can actually discuss in a coaching session, then it's more useful. Because how do we put all of this into practice? And I want to remind you, you could go back and review any of the trainings that take place. For example, I talked today about some of the things we learned in the first training, and we actually talked about work plans and SMART goals in that first that first training. And as you start your work plans, you may want to go back and review some of that, for example. So thank you for saying that. Anything else? In a way?
I like the methodology, and I want to thanks Tony, because I like very much that having there the notes that people at the moment, I say at the moment. And I also appreciate to receive this after, because these notes are very important after to reflect between the coaching and this training session. And I think we can improve the time. Maybe too much hours, but I think we can have a little bit more, because I have the feeling when we close that we don't have to finish. Yeah. So if we can have a little more time in the session, I will appreciate it.
I think it's a good training when people want more. And I appreciate you thanking Tony, because without the scheduling that he does with Alice and the support he gives me, and this is a thing that when we think of volunteers and leaders, Tony's job is sometimes invisible to people, and I'm glad y'all recognize it because it's such an important piece, and I couldn't be doing my work without Tony's work. So thank you.
Tony.
Monica, and then Alice.
Oh, I was doing yay, Tony at first, but I
Okay.
also wanted to say what you would improve might include expand as opposed to improve. Improve seems like there's something lacking, and that asking for more as opposed to it. And I also liked feeling prepared for the session by having had a specific assignment before.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Yeah, I would say this was the first one I think that we had pre-work for, and I appreciated that. As someone who maybe takes a little bit longer to process, or I feel like I can come to the session more ready to go deeper having had that. So I would find it helpful to have that happen more frequently.
Okay, fabulous. Great. Alice?
Sorry, don't everyone else just hate me because I asked for homework. If we were in college right now, y'all would be banging on my door. Sorry.
But we're not. So you're okay, Sari. I have a question about whether it feels directly relevant enough to people's work. And I feel like part of that question is for me to follow up with people in conversations and asking questions about that in the time to come. And based on what Vishwadev was sharing and Monica was sharing, I feel like that's something that I can do, and that I'm just invite suggestions about how we can help carry the thread over. Like, would it be good in 2 weeks for somebody to send out something related to what was covered in the disc training today, or whatever it might be?
Right. Great. All right. So,
oh, and I just, excuse me, but I appreciate that it feels like there's a nice environment in which people really bring their full selves. And
yes.
Linda, I appreciate you for helping to create that, and I appreciate everybody else for helping to create it as well. It's really, really meaningful.
Yes, it is to me too, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate people being willing to be vulnerable and talking about internalized depression and share their own experiences. So, and Monica, I'd love to follow up with you on the invisible wall piece. And so if you want to stay on for a minute after we close off, I'll talk to you a minute about that when we might follow up. So think about your next step and how you might put that into your work. Some of you had specifics. Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, just about the space. There was some mention in the chat box about sharing a recording with others, and it just feels like since it is a space where people are sharing so vulnerably, I don't know what agreement we need to come to for that.
Yeah, I think we only share with the group. I don't think we share it out.
I wrote to share it with the support staff and board, but I take that back. So I withdraw that. I totally agree with Sari. It's important. I really value the safe space here, and I think probably it's better not to do that.
And I think if it is something to be shared, we can take pieces out. I don't know if we can take pieces out, truthfully. I don't know. But
physically you can, but it takes someone who has a video editing software.
Oh, yeah, we don't have that.
But you can remind yourself of what happened, and then you can describe it verbally.
Right.
Selectively.
Or perhaps sharing the slides, because I know we pulled out the elements without maybe some of the personal things that were.
And then if people want to share personally, I think that can be a really powerful tool as well. If people go, I appreciate the sacred space and I want other people to hear this. Because sometimes that's true as well. So you can ask people. So, all right. Thank you very much. And I will see you next month. And have a wonderful fall, whatever weather it is there. Is It's starting to, we have very short days, and it's starting to turn that wonderful time of year where you want to stay in and be in a cocoon.
I don't know who told you that it's a wonderful time of year.
Yeah. I'm getting snow tonight, so I'm not so sure I'm ready for it in November.
I know.
Monica was so enjoyable. Ever in my life, I experienced so much snow at your home. Awesome.
I'll never forget the snow angel.
I have another meeting that I have to go into, so I'm gonna leave. But thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, my friends. Bye-bye.
Okay.
So good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.